If you stand at the edge of a dense forest for long enough, a quiet deception begins to take shape. You look out at the endless canopy, the tangled vines, the dark soil beneath your boots, and you tell yourself that you are looking at wilderness. You feel small in the face of something ancient, untouched, and indifferent to human existence. It is a comforting thought, in a strange way, to believe that there are places where we have never been, places that belong entirely to the wild. But that comfort relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of what is hidden beneath the surface. For more than a century, our understanding of human history was built on things that could withstand the erosion of time. We looked for stone. We looked for marble columns, grand foundations, carved monuments, and buried roads. Where there was no stone, we assumed there was no civilization. When early explorers looked out across the vast basin of the Amazon, they saw an impenetrable ocean of green. To the modern scientific mind, it seemed obvious that this was a pristine primeval forest, a landscape too harsh, too nutrient-poor, and too wild to ever support sprawling cities or millions of human lives. History recorded it as a blank space on the map of human achievement. The mistake was not in our eyes, but in our definitions. We were looking for cities built out of rocks, failing to realize that some civilizations choose to build out of life itself. Deep beneath the forest floor, trapped in dark, oxygen-poor layers of clay and sediment, a silent record has been waiting. For thousands of years, every living thing that walked through these forests left behind invisible traces of its presence. A flake of skin, a drop of fluid, a microscopic grain of pollen, the discarded remnant of a harvest. In the cold, wet darkness of deep sediment, shielded from sunlight and decay, these fragments of genetic material do not disappear. They become locked in the earth, forming a dense, stratigraphical library of ancient biological code. When scientists push long metal tubes deep into the mud beneath the Amazonian lakes and riverbeds, they are not just taking soil samples. They are extracting memory. They are pulling up environmental DNA, preserved across millennia, layer by layer, century by century. And what that microscopic code is revealing is fundamentally undoing our concept of the past. When you sequence the genetic material pulled from those deep cores, the illusion of the pristine forest dissolves instantly. The deep sediment does not show a slow, uninterrupted history of wild jungle. Instead, it reveals a bustling, engineered world. At depths corresponding to thousands of years ago, the genetic markers of untouched primary forest vanish. In their place, the soil hums with the DNA of domesticated crops. Cassava, maize, squash, cocoa, and sweet potato. But it goes far beyond simple patch farms. The eDNA tells a story of incredible density. It reveals the genetic signatures of massive aquatic management systems, artificial ponds stocked with fish, complex networks of canals, and vast earthworks that reshaped entire river basins. It shows that millions of people were not merely surviving in the forest, but actively designing it. They were building vast, interconnected settlements that stretched for hundreds of miles, linked by raised causeways and supported by rich, artificially enriched soils known as terra preta. These were not primitive tribes treading lightly upon a pristine landscape. They were urban planners working with living timber and modified earth. They created a decentralized, agro-urban civilization on a scale that rivals the greatest empires of the ancient world. And here is where a quiet, unsettling realization begins to take root. If these vast, densely populated urban networks existed for thousands of years, where did they go? The answer is etched into the higher layers of the sediment cores, in a sudden, terrifying biological silence. In the layers corresponding to the late 15th and 16th centuries, the genetic signals of human presence drop off a cliff. The eDNA of cultivated crops vanishes. The markers of managed fires disappear. The soil records a catastrophic collapse, a sudden silence where millions of voices once existed, wiped out by introduced diseases and colonial violence before stone monuments could ever be carved to remember them. And then something extraordinary happened in the soil. The forest did not just swallow the abandoned cities. The forest was the city. The massive, towering trees that we marvel at today, the Brazil nut groves, the vast stands of acai palms, the specific distribution of fruit-bearing trees across thousands of square miles are not random creations of nature. They are the direct descendants of cultivated orchards. The Amazon as we know it today is not a wild, untouched forest at all. It is an overgrown garden. It is an abandoned, megascale public work project that continued to grow long after its creators were gone. When you realize this, the landscape around you changes its meaning entirely. The ancient urbanism of the Amazon was so sophisticated, so deeply integrated with the natural ecosystem, that when the people died, their infrastructure did not turn into stone ruins. Turned into jungle. The towering canopy that we once viewed as a symbol of untamed wilderness is actually the physical monument of a lost human landscape. The trees are the architecture. The biodiversity is the legacy of ancient agriculture. We thought we were looking at a forest that had never known human hands, but we were actually standing in the middle of a colossal, quiet ruin that learned how to breathe. It makes you wonder how much of our world is built on similar illusions. We trust our eyes to tell us what is natural and what is constructed, what is ancient and what is recent. We rely on visible monuments to measure the weight of human history, assuming that if nothing is left standing, nothing was ever there. But Deep-Sediment eDNA proves that the Earth holds memories far more detailed than stone ever could. It reminds us that our definitions of progress, civilization, and nature are fragile, modern constructs imposed on a planet that has been transformed by living things for millions of years. As you step back from the forest edge and look down at the dark mud beneath your feet, the ground no longer feels entirely solid. It feels loaded with quiet, hidden intent. Every handful of dirt is packed with the invisible code of forgotten lives, waiting for the technology that can finally read their story. If a vast, ancient civilization can disappear so completely into the green, leaving only microscopic whispers trapped in the deep clay, how much of what you accept as wild nature today is actually just the quiet memory of someone else's home?